Welcome to Tarr Farm Lake 4. Over the next 24 hours, I'm going to be trying to catch a carp from this lake. I've never fished it before. I've got the F40 rods on the barra. We're going to be doing some long range fishing. So let's get down to the swim and see if we can catch a couple. Now, this is home for the next 24 hours, peg number 7. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I've picked this peg. The first one is I actually came down here before the cameramen and I did see a couple of fish show open water in front of this peg and the peg next door, but also in front of this peg. There's a lovely margin going all the way down from the right up towards the far bank, and then you've got a nice snaggy margin on the far side. To be honest, with the sun up, I can imagine this is going to be the area where the fish are going to be holding up. Like I said, but it is my first time down on the lake, so I might be wrong, but fingers crossed I'm right. There's going to be a few fish out there for us to catch. That has got to be the spot. It's just got to be the spot. There's like a little inlet pipe or something on the far bank. It's not actually flowing at the moment, but I'd imagine when it is, the fresh water coming in, it's just going to be a natural area for the carp to hold up. So yeah, I've maybe done 5 or 6 casts now in that area, and I found a spot which, yeah, I'm really confident with. It feels to be around 7-8 foot, but this lake, it does go down to around 40 foot, I believe, in some areas. And with this weather, I'm wanting to fish up the shelf in the shallow water. Like I said, I'm near that inlet as well. So I'm going to do one more cast, but it feels nice and clean. And I feel like that's going to be the spot. I'm just going to fish it with good old typical linear fashion, put 3 rods out there and bait up over the top. So I'll do this one last cast just to make sure I'm happy. And then we'll be getting some munget out there. Yeah, that's the one. 30, 31, 32, 33. Nearly 34 wraps. Well, I guessed it was going to be about 28 wraps. And with me saying 28, I've completely forgot how many wraps I've just said there. But it was a long way, it was over 30 wraps. Yeah, I forgot how many wraps it was. Nearly 34 wraps. So yeah, I'm going to put a little mark in the floor there now. Where I'm fishing, it feels to be around 8-9 foot. With the stretching the mono and swing back and all that, I'm just going to clip the spod rod up. It's the same as the fishing rods. It's all going to be landing in the same area, there or thereabouts. So yeah, I'll get this reeled in and get the rods out. The mix which I'm going to be using down here on Tarr Farm, I've got 3 ingredients and a liquid, and to be honest, each ingredient, although it's quite a simple mix, I feel like they have their own importance within the mix. The first one which I'm going to be adding is 6mm 𝗃𝗶𝗆𝗃 squid pellets. The reason for the pellets, they're quite young fish in here, they will have been reared on pellets in younger years of their life, and yeah, they're just going to recognise this as a food source. So I'll probably put a good few handfuls of pellets in there. That's going to make up the bulk of the mix, and then a good old linear mix isn't a mix without sweet corn. This is just going to add a bit of visual element into the mix as well, with the hook baits that I've kept out there. They're quite bright, quite yellow, and that's just going to sort of match the hook baits that I've got out there, so they're not standing out too much. As you can see, I forgot a tin opener, so I've had to make do with a tent peg. So yeah, add a bit of corn. I'm just going to give it a quick mix. A little bit more, and yeah, already that's starting to look really good. And the third and final ingredient is 𝗃𝗶𝗆𝗃 squid flake. Normally when I fish down at Linear, I like to use 12mm boilies. It's just a confidence thing. However, here on Tarr Farm, before I came over here, I looked on the map of the lake and there's actually a depth map, and there's very little areas out there, very few areas where it's flat on the bottom. It's quite a steep gradient, and although the area that I have found feels relatively flat, the last thing I wanted to do was put 12mm boilies out there and potentially have them rolling off into 30-40 foot. However, with the flake, it's going to sit there, even if the bank is a little bit steep underwater, it's going to ensure that I've got plenty of bait around the mix. So open that bag, sprinkle a bit in. That will do. And the final ingredient is just a little bit of 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏𝗃 squid liquid bait soak. It's quite an oily bait soak. To be honest, I could drink this. It smells pretty good, to be honest. So yeah, I'm going to give it a shake, add it into the mix. And one added bonus of this, since it's quite oily, if carp do turn up onto the spot and start feeding, I'm going to start seeing that slick up on the spot, and I know potentially a bite isn't going to be too far away. So yeah, I'm just going to give it a good old mix. That said, 3 ingredients and a liquid, but that right there is hopefully what the carp are going to be feeding on tonight. Let's get it out there. Fish on. Yeah, got the rods out probably, don't know, a couple of hours ago now. I started spodding, but I'm not going to lie, stood here in the sun, being strawberry blonde, it was starting to get a little bit hot and I was starting to get sunburnt. So I decided to put the spod rod down, just sat down, relaxed with a can of Red Bull, just having a good old chin wag. And yeah, had a couple of bleeps on the left-hander. And we're into our first carp of the session. To be honest, it doesn't feel like a bad fish, but I am fishing 132 yards out, so they always feel quite big when they're out at that range. But it's a good start. I did have a feeling, boys, the sun was going to drop, but the fish were going to get on the feed. It's been so hot today, and with it being 35, 40 foot in areas on this lake, I just felt like the fish were going to be milling around. But yeah, as it's curling off, this one certainly decided to get hungry, and hopefully a few of his mates are going to pop down later on. But let's get this one in the net and get the session underway. Really hard to tell how big it is. The lead must have dropped because it's on the surface. As long as it's a carp, I'm going to be happy. It needs to be 44 pounds 9 ounce because my dad caught a PB the other day and it's bigger than my PB and he hasn't shut up about it. So as long as I beat him by 1 ounce, it's all good. Here she comes, first fish of the session, and she is in the net. Dab. Hey. And there we have it, the first fish of the session. I've only had the rods out for a couple of hours, the sun's starting to set, and yeah, getting a bite this early on in the evening, I am confident if I get that rod back out, maybe put a few more dot spods over the area, might be able to catch another one before dark. But if not, this is the perfect way to start the night. Right, it's starting to get lively, so let's put it back and get some food on the go. Well, I can't believe what's just happened. I've just got the first rod back out on the spot. I literally clipped on my bobbin, was just sorting out my buzz bars because they're a bit of a mess from the first bite. And yeah, the rod that went out there first time of asking is literally went off within 30 seconds. Get in there. Fish number 2, literally caught this one on the drop pretty much. Boom. Right, I'm not going to waste any time because there's obviously a few carp out there. So I'm going to leave this in the net for 5 minutes, unhook it and get another rod back out there as quick as possible. Well, I said with that first fish that I was full of confidence for the night, but I wasn't expecting to get one this quick. Literally 30 seconds after casting out, we've got the second one, and this time it's a little bit bigger. I'll give myself 16, maybe 17 pounds at a push, but we're going in the right direction. So yeah, let's get this third rod out there, put a few more dot spods over the area, just so I know if there's a little bit of bait out there tonight. And yeah, with this temperature dropping, I've got a feeling the fish that have been cruising around up and down that margin today, going to be dropping down, having a good old munch. Out she goes, right on the money. Dink. That was a 10 out of 10 spot, that was. Right, I'm just topping up the spot, and when you're fishing at long range, you want to make sure that you're using the correct equipment. Now, for the last 12 to 18 months, I've been in a fortunate position at Nash where I've been able to help test and develop the new Airforce rods. The rods that I'm using today are the F40s. These are the top range rods, which, to be honest, make fishing at distance an absolute dream. There's loads of different specs which make these rods absolutely perfect for fishing in scenarios like this. But it's getting dark, so in the morning I run through a few of them features and the reasons why I love these rods so much. But for now, I'm going to carry on spotting and see if we can get carp number 3. Well, as you can tell, with the ZT hat on and the puffer jacket, the temperatures certainly dropped last night. I had a feeling with the temperatures dropping, it was going to put the carp on the feed, but I've got a feeling they might have dropped a little bit too much. It was absolutely freezing cold. I had a good night's sleep, not a single bleep through the hours of darkness. But yeah, this morning I've had a couple of bites. One I've landed, the other one, unfortunately, I'm not sure whether it was a bite, a trailer or something else. Yeah, unfortunately it fell off, but who cares, because we've got the third carp of the session, and I think you'll agree, it's an absolute scaly banger. Right, let's get it put back, and we've still got a few more hours to maybe catch something a little bit bigger. Now that I put that fish back, I'm going to quickly take you through the setup that I like to use when long range fishing. When you're fishing out at distance, it is so important to have confidence in the setup that you're using. It's no good having a rod thinking it might blow up or you might frap up, because if you're thinking that, in your head mentally, you might not think you're doing it, but you're not going to be giving it 110% when you're casting, and you're not going to be able to reach the distance. So yeah, first of all, when you get a setup, just make sure that you've got confidence in the gear, and that is exactly what I'm holding here. Starting off with the reel, the LR 10,000 reel. To be honest, I use this reel throughout all my fishing, whether I'm fishing close, medium or long range. But when it comes to long range fishing, it is so important to make sure that you've got a big pit reel. The reason for that is, on the spade itself, you're going to be able to put an awful lot of line on there, which basically means when you cast out there, you're not going to run out of line on your reel. I know it sounds a little bit stupid, but you want to make sure you've got enough line on there. Also, with it being such a big spool, there's minimal friction coming off the lip of the spool when you cast, which just helps you add a few extra yards onto the cast. Moving on to the mainline choice, I'm using a 12-pound Skyline. The reason I've chose this mainline compared to other lines such as Armour line or thicker diameter is Skyline. It's a low diameter, it just flies out there, it's really smooth, again just helping me add a few extra yards onto the cast. With long range fishing, I believe it's all about putting them little percentages in your favour, and once you put them all together, you'll see a massive difference. Moving on from the main line, I've then got a braided shock leader, and like I just said there, it's all about the little percentages, and the reason I prefer a braided shock leader over a mono one is, one, the lower diameter with a braid compared to mono, but also with braid there is zero stretch, so when you cast, since there's no stretch, you're going to be able to compress the rod just a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, again helping you get further out into the pond. When you're fishing out at range, you don't want to be fishing 8, 10, 12 pound mainline without a shock leader, because if you do that, you're just going to crack off and a 4 or 5 ounce lead is just going to go flying across to the far side and potentially kill someone. So yeah, make sure you've got a shock leader. Lead choice, again, anything over 100 yards, depending on the conditions. I like to use a 4, 4.5 or potentially an even 5 ounce lead. But more important than the weight is the actual shape. I've got a distance lead on here. The last thing that you want to do is use a flat pair or an inline lead, because once it gets out to 80 yards or so, they're going to start wobbling and it's not going to have the aerodynamics to carry itself. Moving on from the reel and mainline choice, we then get to the start of the show, the Airforce F40 rods. Now, the Airforce F40, I've been using it for around 12 to 18 months, something like that now. I'm in a very fortunate position at Nash that I've been able to use these rods throughout the full testing period. I've been able to give feedback, and I know people watching this video are going to say that I'm biased because I work at Nash, but trust me, hand on heart, these are the best rods that I've ever used. Like I said, I've been through that full development process. I've been able to see the rods improve, then go downhill slightly, come back up, and yeah, these rods here, I just love everything about them. The thing that I like about these rods the most is how light the rods are, and this is because we've used a high grade 40-ton Japanese carbon. I'm not a specialist when it comes to engineering and stuff like that, but product development tell me that it's a very good carbon, and yeah, trust me, it is, because throughout that testing period I haven't actually been able to blow up one of these rods. With that carbon as well, it makes the rod recover really quick when you cast. When you're fishing out at range, the last thing that you want to do is let go of that lead and the rod just to start wobbling in the air. This is the recovery of the rod, and when it wobbles, you're just adding so much extra friction on the rod eyes with the line going through, and you're just not going to be able to hit the distances. So yeah, the carbon make it super light, also recovers, and also looking at it, it looks pretty carpy. To further enhance the minimal friction of the line going through the eyes, all the rods have been given a 50mm double leg butt eye, and the reason we've chosen a 50mm rather than a 40mm, again, it's just to help with friction, and the double eyes just give it that extra reinforcement for when you're giving it a super big cast. When your rod is on the rest, you want to look at your rod and think, that looks pretty carpy, and it makes you feel like you know what you're doing. And because of that, Nash have kept branding on this rod to an absolute minimum. They've kept it quite dark, and when the rods are on the rest, it sort of gives the rods that custom build look. Yeah, it looks pretty cool, and I've had multiple people stop me at Linear and other venues around the UK recently when I've been using these and testing, asking where I got the rods built, is the thought they were custom, but they're not. They're available to buy at shops, so yeah, make sure to go check them out. One unique feature on these rods is actually on the bottom of the rod, we've got this carbon weave butt grip. Now, a lot of people will think that we've just done this just to be tarty or carpy, but there's actually a very good reason for this. As you can see at the bottom, it's tapered, and with the carbon weave, when you're casting it, you're able to get your hand and proper grip onto there. So when you're slamming it into your chest, there's no chance whatsoever that the rod's going to slip and fall out of your hand. They're just a few of the features of these rods on the F40s. We also do a cheaper model, the F20s. Me personally, obviously I'm going to say it, the F40s are my favourite, but the F20s, for the value for money, they're also a fantastic rod. Like I said, they're just a few of the features, but if you want to see the full specs of these rods, make sure to head over to our website where you can find more information on these incredible rods. Since I've been able to catch a couple of fish on this trip, or a few fish now, I thought I'd take the opportunity to run through the rig that I've caught the fish on, or else it'd be a bit useless me telling you about a rig that I've caught nothing on. Now, in fishing, a lot of my fishing I use the same rig, and that's just down to a confidence thing, and that is a good old trusty blowback rig. Now, there is actually two slight modifications that I've made to this rig just for when I'm fishing further out, just to make sure that the rig A isn't tangling, but also it's going to be presented once it gets out at that range. The first sort of little change that I make is the hook link choice. I'm using 20-pound skin link. However, normally I'd use semi-stiff, but when I'm fishing out at range, I like to use stiff. When you're casting over 100 yards, you'd have to have super bionic eyes to see your rig going in the lake. And if it's tangled, you're not going to know about it. But with the stiff, especially once I've steamed that over a kettle, I know that it's not going to tangle. The other change that I do is an XL anti-tangle sleeve. Now, they're actually a lot longer than I want to use. However, I just find with a standard anti-tangle sleeve, it will be long enough for the rig not to tangle. However, I find with an XL anti-tangle sleeve, if you just chop off a couple of centimetres and use that, you tend to find that you get a lot less tangles. And like I said, when you're fishing out at range, the last thing that you want is that rig tangling, and you're not knowing about it until you're reeling in the morning. But yeah, apart from that, I'm just using a size 4 twister hook. It's the hook pattern that I always use with this rig. A little bit of shrink tube on the eye of the hook, just to help turn the hook in the fish's lip. And then yeah, for hook baits, I've been playing around with a few different things. Yellow seems to be the colour on this session, whether that's plastic corn or little 12mm Scopex squid pop-up, just trimmed down so it sits like a wafter. But yeah, it's all about having confidence, and a blowback for me is just that. It came to the sad part of our 24-hour session down here at Tarr Farm. and that is, it is time to pack up. But it's been a great session. I haven't been able to catch one, I haven't been able to catch two, but I've been able to catch 3 beautiful carp from the lake behind me. And hopefully I'll be returning soon to try and catch something a little bit bigger. On this session, I have been doing a lot of long range fishing with the F40 rods, but before I leave this session, I thought I'd just leave you with a few top tips just to help you add a few extra yards onto your cast. The first one, and probably the most important one, and not one which I hear many people say, and that is have trust in your gear. If you're a little bit scared that you're going to crack off or your rod's going to snap, in the back of your mind, you're not going to give it 100% when you cast. With the F40 rods, like I said, I've used them for a long time. I have complete and utter trust that they're not going to let me down. And because of that, when I'm casting 100 yards, I'm able to give it that extra power as if I'm fishing 120 and I'm going to be able to hit the clip. The next one is use a low diameter main line. If you're fishing far out and you're using something like a 0.35 or 0.4mm diameter main line, it is going to add so much friction. The line's going to be heavy, going through the eyes. But if you drop down to something like 10, 12 pound main line, as long as you've got a braided shock leader, you're going to see a massive difference within your casting. And the third and final one, and something which I tend to find myself doing quite a lot because I'm only 2'6" and I'm quite a small person, that is stepping into the cast. Being able to apply just that little bit extra force, more weight into the cast, it certainly helps add more distance onto the casts. But like I said, that's the end of the video. I hope you've learned a thing or two about long range fishing. And if you are interested in the F40 rods, make sure to head over to our website where you can find all the specifications on these rods. Let's get reeled in and head for home.